Cool. Okay. Well, if you'd like to get started, thank you for everybody for joining. We were meant to originally have three presentations. These were from the three Sandpit projects that were originally funded back in January, and these are funded under the UKRI Building a Secure and Resilient World funding, and also the Department of Science, Innovation, and Technology. There were six projects funded. Last month we had no, so 2 months ago we had the transport projects presenting, and today we have the energy Sandpit projects presenting. So I'll let Laiz introduce yourself and go first, and then the second presentation will be by Kostas from the University of Durham. So yeah, all yours, floor's all yours, Laiz.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Katie, for the nice introduction. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you are. This is Dr Souto. I'm a senior research associate in future energy networks at the University of Bristol. In today's presentation, I'll give you an overview of our DBRES project, which stands for Provision of Distributed Grid Resilience using electric vehicles during extreme weather events. So this project is led by Dr. Desen Kırlı from the University of Edinburgh, and I'm a co-author. I'm a co-investigator, which represents a joint collaboration between the University of Edinburgh and the University of Bristol. So the project was funded at 50K full economic costs. It originally started on the 20th of May and supposed to last for 12 months, with additional support provided by the University of Edinburgh during the extended duration. Well, the challenges we are envisioning to address within this relatively short project. First of all, natural hazards such as extreme weather events are increasing threats in different ways, not just for the society as a whole, but also for infrastructure systems. And to this end, power systems are critical as they are the backbone of modern civilization and supports the well-functioning of different infrastructure and services at different locations. For example, recent storms in the UK, such as Storm Sandpit, Eunice, in Haoran, and Franklin, left millions of customers without electricity, some of which for a very long duration of interruption. So in this scenario of mitigating the impacts of this extreme weather events on the well-functioning of the economy and society is critical. On the other hand, there is the decarbonization challenge, which is further aggravated by the increasing uptake of renewable energy, but also for the electrification of other economic sectors to take advantage of the benefits provided by clean energy. And these technologies and the different complexities they introduce in the systems must be addressed as well. So in this context, increased adoption of electric vehicles can bring challenges and opportunities for the existing infrastructure systems, including electricity and transportation. And among the opportunities, we would like to explore how they can be coordinated effectively to provide resilience to the electricity network and to the customers if correctly managed. So in this context, this project can provide benefits for the existing infrastructure in terms of current access, but also into planning, into short to long-term planning horizons, including benefits for different stakeholders, and also provide benefits in terms of coordination of the different resources to be deployed in the electricity network now and in the future. And tries to increase awareness about distributed resilience in decision-making processes, how distributed energy resources can be effectively coordinated and deployed as needed to support the network during critical events, which is also attractively aligned with UK government and off-chain priorities, especially concerning vehicle to X, which means vehicle to everything, more especially vehicle to grid technologies, and decarbonization challenges as well, and how they can support operational planning practices adopted by distribution network operators and new industry stakeholders. So we'll bring together climate risks, look into specific severe weather events, and how the electric vehicle charging infrastructure can be coordinated to support the network. This next slide shows our tentative work plan for the execution of the project activities. So this project will be jointly carried out by the University of Bristol and the University of Edinburgh, mainly leading different parts of the project. The University of Bristol, represented by myself, will look into representative shock scenarios, including disturbances in terms of frequency, voltage, and balancing requirements for the network and how the electric vehicles can contribute to support the grid. The first activities include identification of representative extreme weather events of interest, especially including storms, how to integrate the severe weather data with network information, including network models and initial measurements, as well as historical faults data sets and other qualitative information about meteorological aspects of the of the functioning of the network, to later model potential faults in the system based on historical events and balancing needs. The second part will be led by the University of Edinburgh, and it includes focus on response and balancing services provided by the electric vehicles before, during, and after the occurrence of severe weather events, and how the electric vehicle charging infrastructure, including not just electric vehicle charging, but also vehicle to grid, can be optimized to support the network, especially considering normal operation, but also abnormal operation driven by extraordinary events. And if you focus on modeling these assets in the electric vehicle charging infrastructure on Python, further optimize it for optimal scheduling and allocation of electric vehicle charging stations, and the participation of these resources in balancing services during abnormal or extraordinary conditions. And they, which will be further integrated into the DAFNI platform along with the data sets. Lastly, we will evaluate the cost benefit in terms of the electric vehicle charging infrastructure for the users in different parts of the network. We are currently in this stage. We have identified some extreme weather events of interest, and the initial network model is nearly ready for integration with these data sets. And this information will be further integrated into this modeling of potential faults and balancing needs of the system. The outcomes. First of all, the feasibility study of providing balancing services to electric vehicle charging as vehicle to grid for impact mitigation of extreme weather events before, during, and after the outage. And looking to scalability as well, we'll focus on an initial case study, but looking to how to extend the modeling frameworks in the data sets to different regional case studies of interest. And another outcome will be the operational planning model, which will consist of a digital implementation of part of the UK distribution network. We also include outcomes in form of dissemination, namely the DAFNI conference in September, stakeholder engagement workshops, which will take place later this year, as well as academic publications. And in terms of impact, we'll have the workflow implemented in DAFNI to investigate the cost benefit of this distributed resilience provided by electric vehicles, which can help policymaking and local authorities to understand the value of these resources under different conditions, as well as improvements in the value of distributed electric vehicles, especially at low voltage distribution networks, focusing on different charging types. We should impact policy through decision-making processes, reflecting incentives on electric vehicle adoption as well, and reduce costs for electric vehicle infrastructure and owners over a range of scenarios. We also the process will also be reflected into the engagement event with the stakeholders and planned visits between the University of Edinburgh and Bristol, potentially including different stakeholders as well for progress reviewing and reporting, as well as networking activities facilitated by networking grants. This is well aligned with UKRI, Building a Secure and Resilient World, and the Department of Science, Innovation, Technology objectives, especially regarding global shocks, how to respond to severe weather events, and decarbonization and electrification through increasing electrification of electric vehicles to meet net zero targets, as well as digital twin modeling using network models, electric vehicles, and optimization frameworks to provide local energy resilience that better prepare and respond to severe weather events at different parts of the network. It further contributes to decarbonization by increasing adoption of low carbon energy resources that can provide support services to the network as needed as an alternative to diesel backup generators. And this can also contribute to increase uptake of renewables by reducing energy curtailment, for example, of wind energy, by helping absorb excess wind energy through smart charging algorithms. Regarding data accessibility and usage, we proceed with FAIR principles, findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability of data, including data sharing practices derived from this project, but also open source and open access data from other projects and resources, such as the previous EPSRC PPP Award project led by the University of Edinburgh, as well as other data sets of EV chargers, car ownerships, and climate risks. And in this slide, we show some potential outputs on the DAFNI platform, which we intend to start working on shortly. This two top workflows shows examples of how the workflows are implemented into the DAFNI platform. We should have something including the modeling of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, such that we can see this optimization outputs and the visualization into the DAFNI platform in a similar way as the stop map shown in the slide. Essentially, the workflow will include operational planning practices for the electric vehicles to provide distributed resilience. The modeling aspect will include not just the network model, but also the electric vehicle operation modes, including different charging algorithms and different normal and extraordinary event operating conditions, as well as the data sets from weather data and the electricity infrastructure. And for the visualizations, we intend to include different case study results, as well as high resolution distribution network modelings, mappings of the network, as well as in an iterative and comparative way between the normal and resilient operational modes. And in this last slide, I show a potential case study derived from previous works, which should be used for an initial implementation of the digital twin concept to be deployed by this project. Here it shows DAFNI Ireland Advanced Management Network Solution provided by SSEN well, essentially it shows the different parts of the archipelago and the energy metering points and the main feeders. We intend to do something similar, but including a higher resolution of the network and the different battery vehicle charges, taking advantage of existing data from the PPP wards and the EPSRC dispatch projects, as well as some previously developed algorithms, including AI-based decision-making within the PSRC PPP ward project, as well as information about the network, the loads, and the generation from the dispatch project. And it will also take advantage of ongoing research on risk and resilience within the PSRC SuperGen English Networks Hub, from which the analysis of our outages caused by different weather phenomena in UK will be derived. That's me. I'm happy to clarify any questions from the audience now or maybe later in the presentations. Yeah, well, that's fine. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Liz. I've just got a blank screen on my screen. You probably need to stop sharing if that's okay. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to see the work that you've done already and that you're already collecting your data sets and looking into the models. So that's cool. And yeah, if you do need any support from the DAFNI technical team, please do let us know. But yeah, thanks again for your presentation. Following on next is Kostas from the University of Durham. If you'd like to introduce yourself, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Katie. Let me try to share the slides. Okay, can you see me and hear me well?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you very much. Thank you to the DAFNI organization for giving us the opportunity to work on this extremely interesting project for us, and I believe for all the stakeholders that would be involved. I am Professor Kostas Nikolopoulos. I'm based in Durham University for the last 5 years, and I hold a chair in Business Information Systems and Analytics at the Business School. And at the same time, I'm the director of the IHRR, which stands for Institute for Hazard Risk and Resilience Forecasting Laboratory, which under that laboratory this project is being implemented. We had a chance to present and make our case and bid in one of the Sandpits, the one which actually is led from Durham. We have success in another Sandpit, the transportation one, but this is about the energy one, and we're very proud because we brought this project to Durham. The idea was to provide forecasting services in a case where you have an energy network. And in a network like that, you have many nodes, where we're focusing at this stage on the household, the home nodes. You could see projects that focusing on the supply end, in the factories, in the wind farms, in the energy production side. You could see projects that are focusing on the distribution end, on nodes in the middle or alternative networks. At the moment, we're focusing a lot on how households consume energy, and you will see why. It's a 9-month project, started in May, aiming to finish in January. We're already well on time and progressing as planned. This is, we had a kickoff meeting about 2 weeks ago in the 26th. We had also our first formal face-to-face meeting in Durham this week on the 8th. And now on the 10th, we're presenting our progress, and we're sort of reaching for dissemination activity, the Tessin data set dissemination activity, to show where that project is and what aspires to do. So there is a lot of expertise at the team. I'm holding in Durham the statistical forecasting end. I have lots of experience since 1996, essentially, bringing that into the UK in 2004. And the last 20 years, I am based in the United Kingdom, first in the University of Manchester, then in Wales, in Bangor, and the last 5 years, as I said, in Durham. The current laboratory through which we operate, it's the IHRR Forecasting Laboratory, and has expertise in all kinds of risk and resilience and forecasting. Now, topping on that, we put one layer of behavioral elements. So we brought Dr. Yang Liu from York St. John University, that is an associate professor there and has a lot of expertise in behavioral elements of forecasting. So we want to see how we can add up the behavior of individual consumers within a house. And there were ideas to even extend that to how that can be extended on behavioral elements of a small industrial facility. But at the moment, we are focusing on household and behavior of consumers within a house. And Dr. Yang Liu will bring expertise into that and how we can model that on top of a standard statistical seasonal or cyclical behavior. Then we have Dr. Haoran Zhang from Imperial College. He used to be in UCL when we bid, but now he's in Imperial College. And he's going to be adding expertise into how we can treat extreme phenomena like extreme weather, and how that can be another layer that's affecting the consumption of energy. So essentially, we're looking at a standard statistical time series kind of informed statistical expectation of consumption in a household, which is topped up and superimposed by behavioral elements, and then superimposed from extreme events like extreme weather events. We have already had the opportunity to hire Dr. Vasilios Bougiukos of Notre Dame, which he is based in London, and he's now part-time working for the project for 8 months, and he will be our research associate in this project, coming with many years of expertise in forecasting, supply chain forecasting, and behavioral economics. And he's also having expertise in programming, so we will be developing solutions in R and Python, and then integrate them in the DAFNI platform that have all these three elements that I just have described. So essentially, the conceptualizing the problem is not that difficult, but implementing solution actually it is. So you're looking on the right part of the screen. You're looking at a network where some nodes are bigger and some are smaller. So you have higher consumption and lower consumption, and that comes with different colors because it's essentially captured different behaviors and different patterns that you may be seeing in the network. And always the question is, how on earth do you supply for a network like that to have uninterrupted supply and therefore consumption? Now, the forecasting problem, many have different opportunities, but there are at least three different elements there. One is a data element. There's a big data element, so you need data as frequent as possible at many different locations. So with smart meters, that's the ideal position where you have as frequent as you want data at any location, and for different source, gas and electricity, different meter readings, and you can have that in real time, and then you can see how things change whenever you're trying to change the behavior of the consumer. Then you have an element which is adjustments, judgmental adjustment that can be imposed to any kind of forecasting scenarios, where there you, based on knowing something that the model doesn't know, you can adjust a forecast, and we're trying to account for that. And then you can have more long-term issues, which at the moment we're focusing more on short-term forecasting, when you want to do policy implementation and you want to affect how a forecast like that is created. So essentially, the proposal was for a quantitative kind of layer where you make a standard quantitative forecast on the household node for start. Then you add human behavior into that. Then you add extreme events into that. And then there is that idea that if we manage to have two ways to make a forecast, one coming bottom up, so you have houses and you forecast at the house level and you start aggregating and go to the regional level, or when you have a regional level, so you have for a whole town a forecast, and then you start breaking down into houses and areas and postcodes. Essentially, anywhere in between the top, which is the town or the region, and the bottom, which is the houses, you could have intermediate layers, regions, neighborhoods, schools, bigger postcodes that they include many houses. And at that level, you may need a reconciliation between the two forecasts that you do. We'll leave that for the very end of the project. At the moment, we want to make sure that we have a very good forecast that has all three elements: quantitative, behavioral, and extreme events, at the household level, and then for multiple data sets, and they create multiple scenarios on that, and then we will discuss further how we can move from that point onwards. One big risk is where you get data of the right granularity and the right frequency. At the moment, we have already discussed with ONS. We had the second visit from ONS on the 8th in Durham. I don't know if you are aware, but there's a big part of ONS coming up in Darlington in the Northeast. So we're going to have more and more frequent meetings, and is part of the three big organizations that are coming to the Durham Economic Campus deck. So it's the Treasury, it's the Competition Authority, and it's the ONS. So we're going to have very close contact. I said already what kind of data we're looking at. At the moment, ONS is providing data at a much lower frequency and geographical dispersion. So they're talking about region, UK or countries, nations, as in Scotland, Wales, England, and Northern Ireland, and that frequency monthly. That's not what we're looking at this project, but we will try see if they have, through their contacts and networks, ability to collect data that are closer to what we're looking at. We have also explored in the first face-to-face meeting on Monday in great detail the data sets that are available in Energy Systems Catapult, and we have identified two data sets that are very appropriate for what we're trying to do. But also we have a plan to collect other data, which I will make clear in the next few minutes in our presentation. Once the data are secured and it's down to the detail we want, then we will implement solutions in R or Python, predominantly in R. And then we will have the training into the DAFNI platform right after the DAFNI conference in September, and we will be ready to start integrating the solutions that we'll have in R into the DAFNI platform. We also create scenarios about how you can see the consumption being developed over a period of time and how you can forecast that. And I will explain 3 to 4 different scenarios that we can play with the data that we already have in hand. If we manage to get location information in one of the 2 data sets, we do have some location information, then we can do a case study for a small region, a small town in UK. There's also an opportunity to discuss if we have the time to collect some primary data and do that way. That could be an alternative as well. And finally, we would like to develop a blueprint for the impact of the use of AI in the context we're talking, because some of the methods that we are using in order to model and forecast the demand at the household level, they are AI-driven machine learning models. And then that's another area, another fertile area where we could be using the benefits of AI into, of course, all the caveats that come with using AI in any context. Okay, so the progress, more tangible progress. The dataset, you can see it on the right. It's coming from the Energy Systems Catapult. It's a dataset that contains daily data. It has more than frequency higher than day. Actually, it has many readings during the day, not necessarily at the same times over the day, but multiple readings over a day. It has gas and electricity. There are 36 actual houses, living lab homes, and the period is July to October, so July, August, September, October, 21, 22, 4 months for 2 consecutive years. Now, that gives us a lot of flexibility, and I will explain why. So, although it seems to be a small sample, it's a very rich sample. So we have 36 houses, multiple readings over the day, 2 different energy consumption, gas and electricity. And then we have the summers of 21, 22, which the 2 summers have very different weather. So we had very bad weather in 22. So one thing. Also, in the second summer, we have started the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. So you have serious supply chain disruptions and price hikes. So, and then subsidies from the government, which we will expect to be seen, then being reflected in the consumption of the households. Also, you have 1 more year down the pandemic. So 21, 1 year after the pandemic, 22, much better in terms of the pandemic, which means more people have been returned to their working in the office rather than working from home. And that means change entirely the consumption pattern at home, because many were working many hours and needing also heating for many hours, not necessarily in the summer, but in the winter time, they needed heating to be able to work from home, which is not the case when you work in an environment provided by your employer. So there are it's a very interesting period of time, those 2 consecutive summers. And that also can give us 3 different forecasting scenarios that we can play. So one is you have the summer of 21 and you're trying to forecast what's going to happen in the summer 22, which you have the actual data and you can see how accurate the models you can try are. So you can essentially evaluate the forecasting services that we were providing for the DAFNI platform. The second scenario you can do is you can take July, August, September and try forecast October and do that 2 times, once for 21, one for 22, in a more time series kind of scenario. That's the second way that you can evaluate your models. And then the third and very interesting way as well is from the 36 houses, you can randomly take an 80% of that sample. You can take, let's say, 30 houses, then train models with those 30 houses, and then try forecast what's happening in the remaining 6 houses. And you can rerun this experiment as many times as you want. And that gives you also a cross-sectional kind of approach in how you can break a data set and see if you can forecast houses that are not necessarily in your sample and see how accurate you are based on the regional kind of aspect of where these houses actually belong. So we can run 3 different very interesting forecasting scenarios. The standard benchmark that you have to be able to do better is just a seasonal naive approach, which essentially says same area, same place, last year, same period, whatever was happening then, that's what you would expect to happen now. So last June, first week of July, again, first week of July in 22, you would expect to be happening more or less what is first week of July 21, and then accounting for whatever has changed, which is the conflict, which is the weather, which is 1 year more in the pandemic. So essentially, if you cannot do better than a simple naive, which is what happened last year, then you haven't done anything significant. So we aspire to do much better than that by adding the behavioral elements and the extreme weather elements. Now, that's plan A, working directly with that dataset. Plan B is another dataset that we have identified from the Energy Systems Catapult, which it has more homes, and it has locations as well, locations in Manchester and Wales, so Northwest and Wales. So we have actual location information. In the first dataset, there is no location information, but there is a contact where we have already tried to contact. We're expecting a response where they might give us which town, at least these are. For GDPR reasons, it's very difficult to get exact location, longitude of these homes, but we may be able to get more information. In the second dataset, the areas are identified, which makes us hopeful that maybe we'll get that for the first one as well, which we believe is a better dataset in terms of the detail that it has. But the second one is a very promising dataset as well, and we may end up doing both once. The idea is once you develop the algorithms in the first dataset, you can apply them in any dataset. So once you do it once, then you can do it as many times as you want. Plan C is we have start discussing with HANA in Newcastle, that is also part of the projects in the Energy Sandpit, and they have data, different granularity and different details, so we may be able to use some of the data held at the moment in Newcastle University. So it's an ongoing discussion. We'll come back to that and discuss. I'll probably visit HANA in Newcastle. It's just next door practically from Durham, down the road from in the train. So I'll try have some regular contact and see what data they hold there, and then see if we can benefit from the networks that we have acquired through the DAFNI Sandpits. Plan D, which is a good one, but I don't know if it's going to be feasible within the time frame of a very short project like the one we have in our hands, is talk to the big companies like Octopus and British Gas, the ones that do have the smart meters, and they know a lot about their customers, and they have very detailed data and as high frequency as you want. And that's the ideal for us playground. And if we go as we plan to for a big bid once the project finishes, then the plan is to go with one or some of these companies like Octopus, British Gas, and the rest, because that's the ones that really have the data that we are interested in, and that's the ones that really could benefit from using the DAFNI platform and the forecasting services that will be developed from us through this small project into their bigger needs that they have. In terms of methods, we have identified many freeware methods that can be used anytime. So there are packages in R. We won't have to reinvent the wheel. There are packages in Python. At the moment, R is the preferable solution that we are using. There's the R forecast library with 10 very strong benchmarks, including the theta method, including exponential smoothing. There's the T-BATS that has many seasonal and cyclical. Bear in mind, cyclical and seasonal is very well performing in this context because you have the impact of the time of the day that affects consumption. So in the morning you wake up, then you go work, then you come back. So there are peaks and lows. Then it's the day of the week. Some days you work, some days you don't work. The weekend has different effects. And then it's the period of the year. So the month of the year, so you have at least 3 layers of cyclicality and seasonality. And thus triple exponential smoothing models tend to work well. And it's well advocated and well published research in this area. So T-BATS give us solutions, ETS give us solutions, ARIMA is standard benchmarks, a good regression model that would capture the behavioral, the extreme weather, and the standard behavior of the household would be a good one. And then once you have that, assuming you have non-linearities in how these 3 are affecting consumption, so weather, extremes, behavioral elements, and the standard consumption, assuming you have 3 variables to capture these 3 things, you can capture a nice regression, but regression is linear. So we have non-linear as nearest neighbors options, and also we have machine learning, like a nice neural network. There are freeware libraries for MLPs, and that could give us a good range of solutions to experiment with. In our approach says that we have to have 4 different models that we want to develop. One that is just looking at the past, just time series. One that is adding a layer for behavioral elements, like change of behavior due to a subsidy coming from the government or due to a tariff coming at a certain time of the day. One that is taking into consideration extreme weather, and one that is taking into consideration all. So a basic model, a model plus behavior, a model plus extreme weather, and a model plus everything. We sort of call it at the moment BA plus WATES, so triple exponential smoothing, behaviorally adjusted and weather adjusted. And these are the solutions that we would like to implement and bring into the DAFNI platform that could then, I emphasize, play at any network and at any application that could come into the DAFNI. Once you have the nodes and once you have a way to account for behavioral elements, then you can use one or more of these models that will be available for any data set in DAFNI. We know that we have the conference and we're planning to present there in September, and we have planned to keep our training of how you integrate solutions to the platform as late as possible after that conference, so sometime in September, near the end of September. Reason being, we want to make sure first we collect all the data we want, then we do the first implementation in R and maybe something in Python, and then we are ready to integrate in the DAFNI platform. We have a vanilla ethics application approved from Durham University, which covers the other partners as well, Imperial and York St. John. But we plan to get a second one as well that would include the possibility of getting interviews in case we go for plan E, which is actually collect primary data from block of flats near the areas we live, and that would give us immediate access to smart meters and to surveys and actual interviews with those using and living in the houses. So cross-checking entirely behaviors, approaches to spending, approaches to consuming, and the actual smart meter data. That's a high ambition. I don't think it will actually happen, but we will have the ethics approval just in case we have time to go that way too. So a thorough plan, and which is going quite well at the moment. We expect a quite impactful project, despite that being a small project in terms of duration and actual funding, but it's a very impactful one. So we expect to have energy forecast at the household and potentially in other nodes of the network, but definitely at the household level. We expect to have AI-driven solutions in this context because we're experimenting with machine learning forecasting methods as well. We expect to be exploiting regional data and the network topology, and we're expecting to capitalizing on this project by going to a full project bid, a big project bid at full nation scale, not just a small area, and then with partnership with ONS, the grid, energy providers, the government, and aiming to get the support from a major UK RI like SRC or EPSRC, most probably the latter one. So this is where we are at the moment, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have at the moment or anything about the future of the project.
Thank you, Kostas. It's good to see the progress that you've already made and the collaboration with ONS and the Energy Systems Catapult. So that's great, thank you. Could you please stop sharing the screen? And I think there's some questions in the Q&A that Lindsay will take us through. That's okay, Linz?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
So the first question I have is for Laiz. To what extent did you use ontologies or standard terms in the project?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I understood the question. If you mean standards regarding the grid code requirements, or
Do you want to repeat the question, Linz, just in case Liz didn't hear it properly?
Yeah, so it just says, to what extent did you use ontologies or standard terms in the project? I don't have any further information. I think they've just posted again saying word libraries or glossaries. Is that related?
oh well, we should do some grid code standard requirements, but as well as other publicly available libraries, for example, from Python.
Sorry, Liz, I can't hear you that very well. Is it your phone or is it somebody else's phone?
Yeah, it's somebody else's.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, did you get the end of that question? I didn't hear it. Sorry.
So yes, what I mean, well, yeah, I got the question. I'm not sure if I fully understood what the person actually means, but well, we use grid code requirements as well as other libraries available in Python, for example, in the optimization and the modeling aspects of the project, as well as just the ability of the electric vehicles to provide the support services in compliance with what the grid code specifies. That's the goal of the project.
Thank you. We've actually had the same question for you, Kostas. I don't know if Lindsay could probably maybe reset again. Sorry, Lindsay.
Yes, no, we don't use any ontologies at the moment. We only use at the moment we are only experimenting with the standard forecasting solutions that we have. So we have some data that we are happy with, and we are using standard forecasting benchmarks at this stage, and thinking about developing a dedicated bespoke solution for the DAFNI platform. But we are not using any specific ontologies at this stage.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is for you, Kostas. What do you see the challenges of potentially incorporating AI into your project?
Okay, this is a very good question. So forecasting is not a decision; is an input to a decision. So the decision would be to change the tariff, would be to make cheaper tariffs available at different times, have more standby, energy efficient or environmental friendly sources. So there are many decisions that you can take in the network once you have accurate forecast. So the AI that we are aspiring to use is not to take the decisions instead of us. So that's something that the grid might decide to do. In our case, is to give us alternatives into forecasting by giving us more accurate forecasts. Now, historically, there is a big battle between machine learning, which are AI-driven solutions in forecasting, and more traditional time series or regression-based causal kind of approach built by humans kind of approaches. We would expect if we start having more data, so 36 houses won't be enough to train an AI method, but there are two things. One thing is bigger data sets that we will have access eventually, but also we can start simulating data from those 36 houses and create much bigger data sets. And then we can start seeing if AI solutions would be having more chances to give us more accurate forecasts. Also, by comparing the linear versions of what we have, which is regression models, to non-linear ones like nearest neighbors, and the one which is AI-driven by definition, de facto the nearest network, the neural network, the MLP, the multi-layer perceptron, we will have some first hints if AI is working at this context, with the caveat that the training set is small.
Thank you. The next question for Laiz: where do you plan to get your data sets from, and do you see any challenges with accessing this data?
We already have the data. We got it from some open data portals, more specifically from SSCN, which will be the first case study of this project. Next, when extending the framework to other distribution network operators in areas of interest, there might be some challenges if some of these data sets are not publicly available. But as an alternative, some generic fault test scenarios could be generated, at least to overcome, for example, the availability of fault data publicly available. And in terms of distribution networks, as far as I know, all distribution networks have open data of their assets and their specifications, so this shouldn't be a problem. And there is also some data sets available from SEDA's data portal. So it could also be used to investigate some operating conditions during severe weather conditions. So at this stage, data availability shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, thank you. Kostas, have you experienced any data access issues?
Yes, at the moment, the first reaction from ONS is that they don't have the data we want at the frequency we do want. So the data is the biggest challenge. At the same time, the data catapult, the energy catapult has the data we want, but it doesn't have a lot. It has 36 houses, not 36,000 houses. And also, for GDPR reasons, they don't disclose exact locations, exact postcodes. So to get the ideal data, it will be something that it will need companies to really commit with smart meter data, which I don't believe it will happen within the time frame of this project. Also, whatever they do, eventually, if the data are uploaded in DAFNI, they will have to be disguised. So you will losing that. Even if you want to use it in your modeling, then you will start losing that. So historically, there have been models that are looking to how far away you are from certain locations, so from a mountain, from a lake, from the sea, and that affects things. I don't think we will have that luxury in that kind of modeling. Nevertheless, I'm very happy with the first data we found, the two that we found publicly available. And as I say, we can simulate for that if need be. And I'm quite hopeful that HANA has more data. And eventually, when we go for the biggest, including all the infrastructure that DAFNI is providing, and the government and ONS, and possibly one of the big players, Octopus, British Gas, Scottish Power, whatever they are interested in. At the end of the day, it's to their benefit to have good forecasts very fast for their network at the household end. I'm remaining optimistic, but as I say, I'm very happy with the initial data we have at hand at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And just following on from that one, there was another question about you mentioning wanting to use data from Octopus and British Gas. Have you contacted them, or are they aware of the data you want to use?
No, they are not aware yet. We haven't contacted them yet. So we want to explore a little bit more with the Energy Catapult. I want to talk a little bit more with the ONS until our next meeting to see if they have better access to them. One way or another, and then we'll do the honorable thing to just knock the door and say, hello, this is Durham University. We have this DAFNI project as UKRI behind. It would be very beneficial for all of us and you. But, I don't want to do that just now. I want to take some time. I'm expecting to do that near the DAFNI conference, so I will be able to report in the conference in September.
Okay, great. Thank you. Laiz, who are the project's key stakeholders?
Right now, it's Scottish and Southern Danish networks, as well as there should be the Scottish Climate Agency, along with the Universities of Bristol and Edinburgh. These are the main stakeholders, and we also envisage to take advantage of assessing for engagement.
Okay, thank you. And another one for you, Laiz. Is the grid model being developed by the project?
So it will be enhanced by the project because we'll take advantage of a previous project in which this modeling of ForNet Ireland was performed. Namely the EPSRC VTG Ward project led by the University of Edinburgh. So we'll take advantage of this previous modeling milestones to have something that can be more or less implemented in a more or less straightforward way into our project.
Okay, great, thank you. And Kostas, another question for you. What kind of access issues do you see with Plan E?
Okay, Plan E, it's always a challenge on the ethics front. So you contact the household, okay? So when you do the ethics approval, you say, I'm not approaching any sensitive members of the population. But when you do a random approach in a block of flats, how do you know in advance if they're not part of, if somebody which is very elderly and in need of something, somebody which is sick, somebody which is, so you simply don't know, and that creates many issues. So when we do surveys and we get vanilla ethical approvals, you tend to go to interview professionals. That's a very different story if you go to professionals within British Gas and see how do you make your forecast rather than actually going to actual consumers. And it's very different if it's an anonymized, disguised smart meter than actually going to an individual, knocking the door, getting a consent, and then finding out that they have been sick for the last 5 years, and then that totally invalidates the process. So face-to-face interviewing comes with many challenges. I would prefer to include it as a plan in a bigger bid that would follow up this one rather than try. But I will try get the ethics approval just in case we can do even some pilot ones to get a better understanding of other aspects of behaviors that we didn't capture in an initial review. So I will have the ethics approval, but I'm not that optimistic that it will be needed during this project.
Okay, thank you. And the last question that I have is for you as well, Kostas. Have you contacted the UK Energy Data Centre for data?
Not yet. We plan to, not yet.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. That was fab. And I'd like to thank Kostas and Laiz for your presentations today and your time. We really do appreciate it. And for everybody that's joined the call today. We have a break in our next webinar in August, but we have all the Building a Secure and Resilient World and all 6 Sandpit projects giving updates at the conference in the 10th of September at Aston University in Birmingham, which you're all more than welcome to join. So our next webinar is in September, and that is from UCRIC, and they are presenting their results. They've recently ran 2 workshops, so they'll be presenting their results in the challenges and opportunities in data sharing. So that'll be fab. So we'll share that link with you guys too. But thank you for joining. Have a nice rest of the afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much,
everybody.
Katie.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Lindsay.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.